Good morning everyone and welcome to South Africa. We're currently on the Bokafal Plateau looking at some really incredible carnivorous plants and orchids. So follow me and we'll go have a look. So to start us out, we have some Drosera sister Flora. This is a really large form endemic to the sort of Newville general area. We're in the very southern part of the Northern Cape, or close to Western Cape, Northern Cape border. And this is a really incredible, tall, big, leafy sister Flora. The stem leaves are super long, spear-shaped. They're fascinating here. Right at the bottom we have some small Rosetta Drosera. Let's go find some more. A quick little interjection here for one of my favorite orchids on planet Earth, Satyrium pumilum. This is a satire orchid, but unlike its larger sort of turret flowering cousins, this thing is really tiny. You can see my finger there. It's small, it's incredibly stinky, it smells like rotten meat. It's most likely pollinated by flies, carrion flies, that come in with the promise of some rotting flesh. Don't quite get it. You can see here, it's growing with sister Flora. What a lovely little orchid. I love seeing it whenever I come up this side. So here we have what could be the most magnificent Drosera of the Cape region, Drer Alba, also known as a white sundew. Most likely for its white flowers, which are sometimes pink. I have a little bit of an issue with the name. As you can see, absolutely gorgeous red plant. There's a small basal rosette of leaves followed by these very long, erect strap-like leaves that point towards the sky, and pretty tall inflorescences as far as the smaller Cape Drosera go. And it's growing in this large, sort of ephemeral pan in the sandstone areas up here. These are very well draining areas. Are very wet in winter. It's springtime now, but as summer comes along, they dry out completely. And the alba have very short little roots that slope with the direction of water movement. How fascinating. Just a few steps over here we have Drosera species Newville, named after the town it is found nearby. It's quite similar to Drer Alba, most likely closely related. Also forms a rosette but doesn't form the erect leaves. Just a small inflorescence with a pink or white flower. It forks quite nicely. Also different to many other sundews and inhibits the same pans and seepage areas as Drer Alba does, but it's limited to the Bokafal Plateau. Drer Alba is also found in parts of the Cederberg and mostly on Gifberg, a very nice place where we're heading tomorrow. And I mean, the ground is absolutely coated in these lovely sundews. There's been good rains this year and the sundews are obviously loving it. As for other plants inhabiting this area with many bulbs, this is a somewhat famous type area. Here we have a lovely Babiana Bobianchi, named after the baboons that love digging them up and eating them so much. Just down here, the Satyrium orchid that's not yet in bloom. I've seen a few. A lovely pajama bush. These you also get very often in sundew habitat down by Darling sort of area. And some Wachendorfias which are not yet open. Very well-known flowers for their Enantia style. They're left or right-handed. So here we have another fascinating orchid. This is Disperis circumflexa, also known as the Klingon cuppy. Not entirely sure how I got that common name, but cuppy in Afrikaans refers to sort of like a little hood or a cap. As you can see, the Disperis orchids, they have this lovely cap here on top of them. Very cute little low-lying orchid. As you can see here, it's just above the ground. Few cute little flowers. I've not seen this one before, so what a pleasure to have found it finally. And yet another orchid, this time a lot more common. This is Pterygonium catholicum, the cow bonnet orchid. The bonnets are mostly pollinated by oil collecting bees. This is again a small little guy just sitting here under a bush. There's a few of them. Very cute little critters. They're very widespread and they self-pollinate, so they get around really easily. Always a treat to see a little orchid. And just a few steps away is another Citerium, the same genus as that stinky guy earlier. This is Citerium humile. It's one of the turret flowering orchids. Very light in color, or it could be Citerium bicorn. Let's check. They're both very variable in color and very widespread, but always super cute. They have these large, broad leaves at the base. And sitting at my feet is an oxalis, the exact species of which I'm unsure. Might be Oxalis flava, the yellow sorrel. But they're pretty hard to identify, especially without flowers. So here we have another little orchid for our troubles. This is Flora, member of the Diza genus, similar to the Flora, the big red one that we all know and love. Except this is a much smaller orchid. It has a very long spur, as you can see there behind the flower. A long purple tongue might refer to the bifid nature of these petals in front. And it has a nice long stem coming from a few leaves flat to the ground. You can see all the Drosera around it as well. The place is littered with them. So that's one more orchid. And here's another nice clump of Drosera species Newville. But I mean, it's a pile, more like it. As you can see, no erect leaves. That's one of the big differences from Drer Alba. And lovely little white and pink flowers. Unfortunately, how clouded it is, we can't see any open today. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have some action. So now just for another quick view of the habitat. Lots of these open sort of slabs. I believe it to be sandstone. And the water runoff catching around the edges is where all the Drosera grow, as well as in the short Restianaceae. Very big family in the fynbos. These short little grassy restios is where you can find a lot of these fantastic plants. Most likely as they provide some cover and structure for the soil to gather water. Let's see what the next site brings us. Good morning everyone, welcome to the second day of our trip. We're still in the Newville area. I'm surrounded by some really amazing Drosera Flora. They're probably about a foot tall, good 30 centimeters, and incredibly floriferous. They're huge. Let me show you some close-ups and some more interesting things in the area. So as you can see here, these Flora are very tall with strong erect leaves. Very upright, spear-shaped. They have an enormous rosette in the base and a large white flower. So this is one that has opened the previous day. The styles are nice and divided. We're still opening it up as it's early in the morning. Big plant. They're growing here by a little stream. And there are hundreds of them in this area. And up there by the rock line it starts getting quite arid again. It's a very localized habitat. There's so many of them. Right at their feet is some Drosera trinervia, the small sundew. Haven't seen too many of these yet, but they're growing nicely here, little rosettes. There's another one of our stinky carrion orchids, the Citerium pumilum. These are a lot larger than the ones I saw yesterday. They seem to enjoy the same habitat, sort of very wet, sandy areas that are seasonally wet. This is probably bone dry in the summertime. You can just see how many of these Flora around and how big they are. I'm really amazed. Just have a look at all of those. So here we have another plant that's incredibly interesting from an evolutionary standpoint. This is some sort of daisy in the family Asteraceae, and those dark marks you see on the flower aren't beetles, but they sure as hell look like beetles. In an effort to attract their pollinators, they have beetle-like markings on them, possibly to get them to try and mate, or via some other means of competition attract them to come and run around in these flowers. They're pretty close to the ground. Beetle attraction is a pretty big thing. Many pollinators in the Cape Drosera sister Flora rely heavily on monkey beetles as their pollinators, as do these daisies. So pretty cool that they have an inbuilt means to attract them. They're even 3D. So just a fascinating little find here. We have some double flower Drer Alba, where the styles may have been replaced by another flower, something similar. So you have this sort of rose formation, and lots of tentacles coming out from the flowers themselves. The plants look normal. It's a regular little Drer Alba. But these flowers are just something strange. What an interesting find. So here we find ourselves with more Drer variegata. Really fascinating sister flora form. It's been obsessing me lately. Very nice tall with the strong leaves. Flower color varies from pink. There's some that are white. You can see a lot growing here in the sand bed. There's a few here with fairly misshapen flowers. So they seem to really like these well draining sands. It's a very large part of the Western Cape. They're growing in with a lot of restios. They're following this little water embankment. Here behind me, you can see this lovely white one and a really large pink flower that's kind of fallen all over the place. That's for the form of the plant, as with earlier plants. Very nice and tall, strong, erect leaves. Even the basal leaves with somewhat of an upward tilt. So really, really incredible plants. Nice. So, welcome to Gifberg, the Poison Mountain. Here we have some really beautiful little Drer species orange flower. They're very dainty little creatures. Bright sort of crimson pink orange flower, very nice red styles. And plenty of fly sugar around. They're growing sort of little shallow depressions. Pretty wet. They're growing here with an oxalis. I'm unsure of the species. And other than that, it's just bare rock. A lot here on the other side as well. Let's have a look at them. So here's a nice clump of them. They're pretty small. They have a very tiny rosette. As you can see there, small flower. They're really clumpy. We want to get a better look at the habitat and at Boaz's shoes just out of frame. You can see it's nice and mossy and green. And these will dry out completely in summertime. This is a very seasonal habitat. But man, just love these. They're found over quite a wide range, but I haven't seen any yet on this trip, so I'm quite happy. So I'm back down with some more species orange, and another carnivorous plant I haven't shown you yet today. Utricular Brai. The form up here is nice and big. Has lots of leaves and traps at the soil surface, and traps within the soil that capture small organisms. So as you can see here, it's pretty like just sloppy and peaty and not nice. There's a bunch of flowers here. The ones on Gifberg are large, quite white in color. I haven't seen pink ones up here. The smaller ones can be a bit more purpley. Wherever they grow, there's always the little purple flowers as well. I'm not entirely sure what that is. They may be semicleistogamous or something along those lines. But I really cannot get over these Drosera. You can see how nicely they grow here in this clump. Beautiful orange flower. They're a bit redder further north towards the Makwa. It's the northernmost sundew in South Africa. Grows really far up, very dry areas and vernal pools and such. So seasonal pools that fill up in winter and spring, and in summer they're just completely gone. It's dry, super hot up there, and the habitat is absolutely stunning. Lots of water. Absolutely love it here. Growing here with the Drosera is a little sympatric plant called Laurenbergia repens. I see us around quite a lot with the Drosera and the Utrix. And these seeps, you can see, there's your sundews. Down here, and here's the Laurenbergia. Very cute little plant. It sort of crawls across the ground. Got some growing at home. And it gets these really long trailers in some places. These are a bit more of a compact, small, red, very reddish plant. The growth point is green, which is quite interesting. And just to give you a better look, this whole little CP habitat, pretty bright, lots of Utrix, lots of sundews, and lovely little sympatric plants. Good morning everyone, and welcome to the third day of our carnivorous plant trip. Today we've continued here on Gifberg, and a nice thing to see so early in the morning, this absolute field of Drer Alba. They're growing in this very nice little pan with a tiny plant called Oxalis oculifera. You can see all these little sort of blue-green leaves between here. And the funny story with those is Eric Green, many years ago, wanted to get some Drer Alba into cultivation in Europe. So we waited until these pans were dry. As you can see, nice, basically standing on rocks right now. All this vegetation here. So we waited until it was dry, and he came and dug into the ground. And he found some little tubers, and thinking, sure, this must be all the Drer Alba we could ever need. Dug up some tubers and sent them to Europe. But soon, all that came up were these old green leaves, the Oxalis oculifera. Turns out he had collected Oxalis tubers in these Drer Alba, a very short little root that runs with the direction of water movement in these pans. They flower a little bit later, so unfortunately there's no blooms that I can show you. But there are an enormous amount of sundews here. Wow. There is also a lot more of this Utricular Brai, the common Cape bladderwort, but these slightly larger white ones I do not much like to focus. They're growing in here amongst the Drer Alba. See a lot of them here in this morning shade, and they grow all along here. Let's go find some more. I've slipped on my macro lens quickly to give you a better idea of how they look. They're going on gently here in the breeze. Nice big white skirt. Very bulbous yellow top. Don't know what the rest of the parts are. But they're very cute. Quite a large flower as well compared to Biswater in most places, which is significantly smaller. There are some very little flowers among these, like sort of purple, probably semi-clystogmus one, next to the bigger regular one. So here we have the Cape's smallest Utricular Brai serus. It is really tiny. It's also endemic only to these pans. The camera is basically on the ground. You can see there's a finger for scale. Minuscule little flower. It's an annual. So it will grow, set seed, die back. It's growing basically out of this little layer of silt on top of these stone slabs. They're annually wet. You can see some Oxalis leaves around it. So it's very cool. It's endemic to Gifberg and the top end of the Cederberg and maybe a few surrounding areas. A pretty small range for a very small Utric. So on the way down the Gifberg Pass, you're greeted by this amazing view. So sitting here still in the shade is the original Drosera Gifberg red seepage. As you can see, there's a lot of water running down the cliff, but a lot of sundews. You can see them right up there, running all the way down, and here are a bunch of them. So this is where the original red Capensis in cultivation were collected, right here at this very seepage. Runs along a little bit with Boaz from Flora busy having a good look. So if we get close to these guys, you can see pretty red, very nice form in cultivation. They're really, really impressive in color. And these are literally just growing on muck that's clung to a wall with water seeping down it all year long. Fascinating. now in the Cedarburg, along the Paques Pass, these massive ridges of indomitable sandstone. And right here with us are some Drosera sister Flora. It's a very red leaf form with sort of a mauve flower. There's one open, I'll show you momentarily. And there's also the cutest little orchid, Disperis villosa, one little oil pollinated orchids. As you can see, very sandy, plenty of plants. The flower over here, sort of this weird mauve color with nice venation running down. This one only has 4 petals though. It's not unheard of. Some have 6, some have 4, but most have 5. So here at another seepage we find some of the Drosteras in flower. See the amazing monkey beetle. This beautiful creature is a pollinator. You often see them absolutely sourced in pollen. These big red plants out here. Get some better shots of the habitat for you. Here we can see a lot of them. They're growing on this bigger seepage now. Lots of moss. Not as sandy as the last spot. There's our double flower batch from last time. They're growing here with some little bulbs, possibly Porridias, also known as Cape Stars. See red everywhere you look. Even down there, they're still going and the water runs on down into a slot down there. And the general habitat is this very nice big turrets of sandstone. World-renowned rock climbing location actually for all these lovely sandstone boulders. So here is our last Drosera for the trip, a lovely pink flowered form of Drosera sister Flora. Doesn't show very nice on the camera, but it's very pale, sort of lilac pink color. The plants themselves are really tiny, intense red in color as well, not something you see very often in Drosera sister Flora. They could just be this small due to drought. They're growing in a small pan. And this flower coming out of the bush is exquisite. There's not very many flowers around, most of them being nibbled off by herbivores. Something I've been seeing increasingly often lately, probably because sundews are one of the few soft and delicious tender plants in the fynbos, most of them very hard or foul tasting. So herbivores love to eat the flower stems off of these guys. You get a good little habitat view. We pan around here, it's this very mossy sort of seasonal seepage. Like most winter growers, it grows where it's wet in winter and spring, and in summer it's very dry. Up here you can see the massive sandstone faces that make up the Cedarburg Mountains. So that brings an end to our amazing 3-day trip up here through the northern parts of the Western Cape, through Newville, through Gifberg, and through the Paques Pass in the Cedarburg. I'd really like to thank Boaz from Fierce Flora and Alex from In Search of Species for bringing me along this fantastic adventure. There's very few places in the world where you can see plants and scenery like this behind me. So until next time, happy growing.